The message this morning, as I put it together, it sort of was like, remind me of Charles Dickens' novel, A Tale of Two Cities. And that's essentially the message today. And we're gathering to remember and honor our parents, and here they are laying side by side. But this place is thousands and thousands of miles away from the places they drew their first breaths. And when we think about the odds, what would have been the odds that circumstances would have joined them as man and wife, and that this would become their final place of rest? Our mother, Anita, or from the old country, Anita Khachadourian, she was born at the turn of the century on the 4th of July. You great-grandchildren remember that your great-grandmother was born on the 4th of July? And that was something rather providential, considering the country that she would eventually become a citizen of. Anyway, the city she was born in, Smyrna, which is now called Izmir, Turkey, and it was one of the most fascinating cities in the world. It was blessed with a beautiful harbor and overlooking the azure Aegean Sea, and the largest seagoing vessels of the day anchored in her waters. The city had a gorgeous location, enjoying a mild climate, multiple business opportunities, and a very vibrant way of life. And Smyrna was an exotic blend of cultures: Armenian, Greek, Turkish, thousands of people there, mixed blood, and actually a city of about 500,000 people. It was a dynamic city. People were engaged in multiple trade, cultural pursuits. And the principal promenade was the quay, which was one of the city's cultural and economic centers. And I believe in your notes you can see pictures of the quay, just to give you just kind of a glimpse. Along here you had hotels, clubs, cafes, theaters, agencies, modern office buildings. All this was spread out along the waterfront. And nearby was the American Theater, the American Consul General in Smyrna. Not the ambassador. The ambassador was in Constantinople. But the Consul General, George Horton, called it the prettiest building of its kind in the Ottoman Empire. And also on the waterfront stood homes of some of the most prominent merchants: Armenians, Greeks, even some Dutch. And it's just, when I look at these, it's just absolutely marvelous. Smyrna was a city of great energy and vitality, but in spite of all its culture and urbanization, if you can imagine this, it was also a city of the East, visited by nomadic traders and their caravans carrying exotic goods that were sold in the city's bazaar. And I still remember Mom talking about the camels. In fact, one of the things they used to do was the carpeting, the Persian carpets. She said one way they wanted to show them as kind of worked in, and she said actually they let the camels walk back and forth over them to give them a more used look. When you stepped into the Turkish quarters of the city, it was almost like visiting an earlier time, transported into the pages of the Arabian Nights. So Smyrna was a blend of Eastern and Western cultures, religions living together, but with a rather wary and suspicious eye of one to the other. For the Christians of Smyrna, the end of World War I brought about great hopes. And I think we've talked about this in our past messages. For it appeared that with the end of the Ottoman Empire, it was going to result in Smyrna and its environments becoming part of Greece, and no longer living under the heel of the Turks and those of the Muslim faith. And from previous gatherings, we know those dreams were shattered with the defeat of the Greek army. And of course, they got their hopes up when at the end of the war in 1918, the Greek army actually landed in Smyrna and then went into the interior to protect the Greek villages and things that surrounded the Smyrna area, and went into the interior quite a ways. And then we know, of course, what happened. We know that suddenly the Greek army came streaming back into Smyrna, and Greek transports came and took them off, and back to Greece they went. I'm ad-libbing here a little, dear. No, I'm ad-libbing here a little bit. So you can imagine these people that were waiting for, hey, we're going to be a part of Greece. Suddenly the Greek army's gone, and they're saying, now what? And so we know exactly what happened. We know that the Turkish army came, and the horrible catastrophe that befell Smyrna and its Christian inhabitants. And I think some of you maybe have seen this picture of the fire on that page.
You skipped a whole bunch of stuff. You skipped page 4.
Oh, how did that happen?
I don't know.
Oh, I did skip page 4. Ah, okay. Well, what I skipped, yeah. I did. So, you see, you have the pictures of the girls.
Yeah,
The girls' school. I said, well, yeah. Smyrna was one of the oldest cities in the world, and if you trace back its history, it went well back before the birth of Christ, and even before the time of Alexander Great. And when you read the history of this place, and I know Aram, we've got some memories of it, but it was like, if I had a choice of, well, you've got 5 places to visit on this earth, and I would have thought this is a place that I'd put definitely in that first 5. Our recollections, Aram walking that morning after we got to Izmir that afternoon, and it was the next morning, and we were walking along the waterfront there. But I didn't see anything that resembled this as we took that long walk and then finally moved up into what was the old Turkish quarter. But you can see these schools, and this is the place that our mom, where she was born, grew to adulthood, was educated here, and found herself teaching at the Collegiate Institute, a girls' high school. And you have to think, at this point in her life, she never ever dreamed that she would be leaving this place someday. So then we know that the Greek army is defeated, and now the people in the city are wondering what happens next, and we know that with the Turkish army approaching and suddenly the city burning. And we know about the miracle rescue. The American sailors, you recall, they came up to Mom's school, and they wanted to take the American staff, and Miss Mills, the vice principal who was in charge of the school, said, no, you have to take all the staff, you have to take the students. And the sailor said, well, our orders were only to take you, and we're going to take you. And literally, they almost picked her up, and she said, girls, girls, follow me. And we know that the descriptions of our mom talking about how they were running through these burning streets, and staff and students, and somebody described what was happening in the city as a titanic blast furnace. And you have that picture of the city burning. And with the city burning, where did the people go? Down to the waterfront. Miraculously, Mom and the other staff, members of the staff, arrived at the waterfront, and you can see this incredible picture of the thousands and thousands of people at the waterfront, attempting to flee the fire, attempting to escape the murderous Turks, and truly this was a scene from hell. And then came the miraculous rescue and escape to Greece, and we have a picture showing this ship actually leaving the Simpson, leaving the harbor. So Mom and the members of the staff, they ended up in Greece, and the school authorities from there arranged to bring Mom and the other young ladies to the United States. And this was a 2-week voyage, and you don't have a picture. This is a 2-week voyage on the ship, the King Alexander. And I think we've told you the stories about how when she and the other ladies got on the ship and they were down next to the coal bin, and how she kept working her way up until they were finally, I think they were sleeping in the first class section of the boat. And that's another story and a funny story in itself. So they spent a brief time in New York. She said they were met by the staff of the American staff. That's not in the notes. They took the ladies out, they shopped them, gave them clothes. So she spent some time in New York, and I'm digressing a little bit. She said that the school officials asked when they arrived in New York if she would talk to some of the press. And a number of people came into this room, and she and another lady, they start talking about about what had happened to them. So there was this interest, and she said the other lady as the story was unfolding, she said she just broke down and started crying and left. And she said, I was sort of in tears when I finished too. Anyway, they spent a brief time in New York, and then they went off to different places in the United States. And Mom was put on a train to Oberlin College because this is where she wanted to continue her musical career. And she said in her diary, she said she had remembrances of that final journey to her new home. And she said when the conductor said Oberlin, and Oberlin was a town with Oberlin College in the northern part of Ohio, and she said, she thought to herself, I wonder if there's going to be anybody there to meet me. And so she was wondering, I didn't really know where this college is. And she said as she was alighting from the train, all of a sudden she heard a group of people saying, Anita Chakarian, Anita Chakarian. Suddenly these people from the school came up and greeted her and took her to the college. And she said when she got to the college, one of the gals said, taking her to the women's dorm, and they said, we have some of the rooms, they have two ladies, and other rooms are single ladies. And this one lady or student said to her, oh, we thought, Anita, after all you've been through, you might just want a room for yourself. So she said, and she was ushered into the room and said, everything here is yours except the furniture. So evidently they had provided toiletries and all this. And I want you to just think about that moment. She walks in this room, she's all by herself, she's looking around, she's in Oberlin College in the state of Ohio, thousands of miles away from the place that she had left where she thought she was safe and had a future, and all of this transpired in just a few weeks. don't have an exact timeline, but maybe in 8 weeks. Can you imagine sitting at your home and then suddenly in 8 weeks your whole world is turned topsy-turvy and you're sitting in a strange place in a country thousands of miles from your birthplace?